Welcome back to Perkins Pipes. So we're celebrating 70 today, and no, it's not my 70th birthday. Got the good old Peterson Professor from the Sherlock Holmes line out, and it seems appropriate for what we're going to talk about and why we're celebrating 70 of something. So let's get this guy lit and let's get to talking. So what is it we're celebrating 70 of? Well, we're celebrating the 70th video on the Perkins Pipes channel. Which seemed like a thing worth celebrating. I mean, come on, we like to celebrate all kinds of things, right? So, I launched this channel, I think it was the day after Christmas in 2023, so December 26th of 2023. And it's so cool. We've got hundreds of followers right now, and golly, over 30,000, 31,000, I don't know what it is, of views. And this is the 70th video that I put out. Really hear the birds chirping here in the late afternoon here in central Indiana. Beautiful spring afternoon. And I guess that's what people seem to enjoy about the channel. It's certainly what I enjoy sharing on the channel is pipes and the finer things of life. So if you like talking about the finer things, especially around a pipe, we invite you to hit subscribe, join the fun here at Perkins Pipes. Check me out over on Pipe Cottage Social. There, I've got a group there called The Finer Things, and I'm in most of the pipe groups on Facebook as well. So, what I've enjoyed so much about this, and we'll get to the topic here in a moment for the 70th video, but what I like so much is interacting with so many different people from all around the United States and outside the United States as well. Matter of fact, I'm hoping to get to meet some more of you a little more directly. As I mentioned in the last video, I'd done a survey on YouTube to see if anybody would be interested in maybe doing a Zoom chat, kind of an interview chat sort of thing, and I would edit that into a video, put that out. A lot of people said they would be interested in doing that, so definitely looking forward to that and getting to know some more of you a little more directly that way. So since it was the 70th video, I thought, well, what am I going to do for this? To kind of celebrate this. And so one of the things I thought was, hey, what albums came out in 1970? And two of albums that I thoroughly enjoy came out in 1970. There was Led Zeppelin's third album, which certainly has one of my favorite songs of theirs, Tangerine, and Deep Purple in Rock. And I don't know if you could get two more different hard rock albums than Zeppelin's third and Deep Purple in Rock. Which was the first of the new lineup at that time, the Mark II lineup of Deep Purple, featuring Ian Gillan on vocals and Roger Glover on bass. What a lot of people consider the quintessential lineup for Deep Purple. And I thought, well, I don't know, I don't want to talk about both albums in the same video. They're both worth talking about. And so I couldn't pick one, so I thought, well, let's not do that. but I liked the idea of doing something with a year. So I went way back to the year 70 BC, that is, which was the year that the Roman poet Vergil was born. So if you enjoy talking poetry, enjoy talking history, stick around. I think you might enjoy this episode. So Vergil is one of the great Latin authors, one of the great Latin poets. And I really started to discover, I had a little bit of Vergil in high school. We read some of the Aeneid in high school Latin, fourth year Latin. But I really didn't discover kind of who Vergil was as a poet until my undergraduate studies in classical studies at Indiana University. And it was actually my freshman year I was able to test into a higher level of Latin, and second semester of my freshman year, I had a class in Vergil with a professor named Mark Damon. And so he introduced us to two of Vergil's works. Vergil wrote a total of three works, and born in 70 BC, died in 19 BC. There's some poems that are attributed to him that we now think are spurious, that they really weren't written by Vergil. But there's three works that we're quite confident that were written by Vergil. And they are the Eclogues, the Georgics, and the Aeneid. And we're going to talk briefly about all of those, a little bit more about two of the three. So in that freshman Vergil class at Indiana University, we read the Eclogues and the Georgics. Now, these are the first two works. They're actually collections of poems that Vergil wrote. Here's the book that we used for the Eclogues. And the Eclogues are a collection of 10 poems about shepherds. And every time I teach my students or talk to my students about this, I say, you got a lot of shepherd music on your Spotify list, do you? The best way to think about that might be country music today. Rural society, agrarian society. Vergil grew up on a farm, and he knew a lot about that lifestyle. The Georgics, that's a collection of 4 poems about farming. So his first 2 works are agrarian; they're rural, and I like the Eclogues better than the Georgics. My wife, who's also a Latin teacher, she's a big Georgics fan. She loves Georgics. In fact, she loves the author Wendell Berry. Some of you may know Wendell Berry. He's an American agrarian author, writes fiction. Think books like Jayber Crow and Hannah Coulter. Some of you may know some of his stuff. He lives in Kentucky, operates a farm in Kentucky, and writes fiction. I liked the Eclogues. And the thing about the Eclogues, I mean, you talk about nothing that I could relate to. I mean, I'm not a shepherd. I didn't grow up around shepherding. But I'm going to show you a little bit of the book here. The reason I came to love this so much was because of the professor. And I'll go ahead and ask a question right now. I usually ask questions at the end, but I want to throw one in right now. Did you ever have a teacher who made you fall in love with the subject, especially maybe a subject that you maybe didn't think that you would enjoy? And I certainly knew wanted to be a Latin teacher, even as a young man. So I knew I wanted to read this stuff. But Mark Damon really brought it to life for me. Now, to give you an idea, here is a look inside my freshman edition of Vergil's Eclogues. And what you're going to notice is a lot of writing, a lot of margin notes in and around the text of the Latin. And I remember thinking then, really, with whom am I more impressed? Am I more impressed with Vergil for writing this stuff? Or was I more impressed with Professor Damon for unpacking it all and helping me and the rest of the class to see the beauty in Vergil's poetry? So I loved it. Loved it very, very much. I've enjoyed reading from it ever since. And it's one of those things like, certain famous first lines. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Call me Ishmael. Rage, goddess, sing the rage of Peleus' son Achilles. These great first lines of works. And, the first couple lines of Eclogue 1 will always stick with me. Titure tu patulae recuban sub tegmine fagi silvestrum tenui musa meditaris ovena. This character, a shepherd named Melibæus, is talking to his fellow shepherd, a fellow named Tityrus, and he says, Tityrus, you reclining beneath the shade of a spreading beech tree, you ponder the sylvan or wooded muse on your slender reed pipe. So I enjoyed that very much. So as I say, Vergil started off writing this agrarian sort of poetry. First collection, 10 poems about shepherds. Second collection, 4 poems about farming. And then he does something completely out of character. He wrote the Roman national epic poem, the Aeneid. And when I'm teaching this to my students, I often point out, I say, can you imagine asking somebody to direct the next Marvel movie franchise, one of the great, superhero epic movies, big action adventure movie, but a person as a director whose only credits were in directing PBS specials about dirt. All right, and I always emphasize it like that. It's almost something really boring, and not necessarily that the agrarian poetry is boring, but it's nothing compared to the Aeneid. I mean, good grief. The Aeneid is the Iliad and the Odyssey rolled into one. You've got gods and goddesses. You've got warfare. Got quite an epic love story. So epic it got turned into an opera by Purcell, Henry Purcell. So it seems a little bit odd that this guy did this. Well, the Aeneid became his runaway bestseller. It was a smash hit from the very, very beginning. If you don't know the Aeneid, I highly recommend it. It's a great, fun read. In fact, I'm going to link to a website that I put together that has lists all of the English translations of the Aeneid. There's been pretty much a consistent run of English translations of the Aeneid from the early 1500s right up until now, the 21st century. So what is so great about this thing that people keep wanting to translate it into English, people continue to read it for 2,000 years? Well, I'm going to give you a couple samples from 2 translations. And again, there's so many translations you can go to, certainly modern ones if you really want to get a good feel for it. One of the earlier ones is from 1697. You can still find it in print very easily. John Dryden's translation. And here it is in the Penguin edition, John Dryden, who wrote in rhyming iambic pentameter couplets, like Alexander Pope. And you've heard me speak of Alexander Pope before on this channel. He's probably my favorite British poet of all, although I love many. Love John Donne and love Dryden. And Shakespeare, and so many others. But let me give you a little taste of Dryden's translation. And the story starts off. It starts off in the middle of things, as we say, in medias res. Very much like the Star Wars saga. You remember that the first Star Wars movie that came out in 1977 was actually Episode 4, A New Hope. And you're in Episodes 4, 5, and 6. Then came Episodes 1, 2, and 3. George Lucas was deliberately imitating the classical style of telling an epic by starting in the middle of things. So, the Aeneid is about the Trojan hero Aeneas at the end of the Trojan War. After the Greeks have sacked the city of Troy, he sets sail with some refugees to find a new home. Ultimately, they do in Italy, and the Romans considered him the forerunner to their race. So here's Dryden's translation in rhyming couplets. Arms in the man I sing who, forced by fate and haughty Juno's unrelenting hate, expelled and exiled, left the Trojan shore. Long labors both by sea and land he bore. And in the doubtful war, before he won the Latian realm and built the destined town, his banished gods restored to rights divine, and settled sure succession in his line, from whence the race of Alban fathers come, and the long glories of majestic Rome. Now, Pope translated the Iliad. Pope comes along a little bit after Dryden. Like I say, this is 1697, and Dryden lived from 1631 to 1700. Alexander Pope came along a little after. Pope lived from 1688 to 1744. So he wasn't going to translate the Aeneid because it had already been done in rhyming couplets. Dryden had done it. There was no reason for him to do it. So he translated the Iliad and the Odyssey. But one of the things that Pope said in his introduction to the Iliad, and people often would compare Homer with Vergil, just as people will compare, Led Zeppelin with Deep Purple. People seem to want to compare the Beatles with the Rolling Stones and this kind of thing. So Pope made a comment, even though I love Pope, he made a comment that I don't really enjoy. I don't like his comment very much. He says, Homer makes us hearers and Vergil leaves us readers. And it was kind of a dig at Vergil, that Vergil was a little bit more artificial, is made to be read, not made to be listened to, this kind of thing. And maybe you get a sense of that from that kind of high-flying, high-flown English of Dryden's translation. I like it very much. I like the Dryden translation. I think it's good. But if you want to read it and get a different feel for it, I might suggest something more modern. Now, my wife, she really likes David West, his prose translation. And we'll try to throw some links here in the notes about this for you. My favorite poetic translation, and there are people who say, that you can't translate a poem into prose. If it's written as poetry, it should be translated as poetry. Well, I don't know that I agree with that. In fact, I like David West's preface to his prose translation. He says that's really unfair to people who write really good prose. much of our prose is very poetic. It's very, very well done. And so I would agree with that statement. Nonetheless, probably the English translation that has been my favorite now for quite a number of years is this one by Sarah Rudin. And she's the first woman to translate the Aeneid and to have it published. To my knowledge, she might be the only one, actually. And her volume, her translation came out in 2008. So very recent. And again, in terms of language, I think something a lot of people would enjoy. Part of the problem of talking too much, keep losing my light. So her translation is not rhyming. She did keep it in iambic pentameter, however. And you'll have to forgive some noise there. I think I've got a neighbor who's doing some yard work, it sounds as if. So Sarah Rudin's version goes like this. Arms and a man I sing, the first from Troy, a fated exile to Lavinian shores in Italy. On land and sea, divine will and Juno's unforgetting rage harassed him. War racked him too, until he set his city and gods in Latium. There his Latin race rose with Alban patriarchs and Rome's high walls. So clearly much more modern in terms of the language. So anyhow, Vergil, born in the year 70 BC. Thought we'd say a little bit about Vergil here for this 70th episode. I hope you enjoyed it. As Malcolm Guite likes to say, I do these little things in order at last to do nothing. Or as I like to say in Latin, Parva ago ut tandem, nihil agam. Have a wonderful day.